Well, on my social media feeds, there seems to be no small difference of opinion on who's winning these trade negotiations, either China or the US. And especially the US, I mean, we haven't heard really anything out of China. It's just people here arguing among ourselves. And so it kind of dawned on me that no one has ever really said or defined what is winning, okay? And our government is not monolithic. And in fact there's three major factions that are duking it out on our side, okay, in regards to how we should deal with China. Now, I will post this article. I looked this guy up. I believe he's from the American Enterprise Institute. Certainly not a conservative organization. I mean, it is a conservative organization. And he writes that about the war for America's China policy. So the war among ourselves on what is our China policy. So here in the first paragraph, he says, look, Trump's first administration was, famous for assembling a team of rivals, but the second administration really takes it to a new level where there's been, and we all know this, literally fistfights, okay? And more than one. So he says there's three factions. The economic nationalists, seeking to rebuild American industrial capacity, hard power competitors, determined to maintain technological and military superiority, and transactional restrainers, pursuing concrete deals that reduce the cost of foreign entanglement. And he goes on to say in the second that paragraph that there are legitimate goals from all three, but this has stopped us from having a coherent policy. And I have stated this many times. I think almost everybody has, so I don't think this is anything new. Okay, so let's go over what are these three. The economic nationalists believe that we've hollowed out our industrial heartland, and they said that Washington treated trade as a technical matter for economists rather than a strategic choice with profound implications for national power. So in the end, they believe offshoring entire industry, gutting manufacturing, and nurturing a dangerous dependence on unreliable partners. In essence, theirs is you can't be a national power without economic power. You can't be an economic power without manufacturing power and making it yourself and controlling it. Economic nationalism. And we hear this all the time. I would argue in the administration, just my observation, do not know, I would say Navarro. Okay? Now, the hard power competitors, they see the same landscape, but in different failure mode. They think an underinvestment in military and technological capabilities needed to compete with a peer adversary, i.e. China, okay? So they want to concentrate on hard power, right? Spend the money on our military. And this means accepting lost commercial opportunities from export controls, friction with allies over burden sharing, and sticker shock from sustained investment in national defense. And I think two of the three, the first two here, we have experienced already, okay? So the hard power competitors, again, it's not like who wins, and it's like how does the influence each one of these decision points that we're having, okay? By the way, I would put Lutnick as the hard power guy. Now, transactional restrainers look at both approaches and see unsustainable trajectory. They ask, how long can America afford to simultaneously confront China, subsidize European defense, garrison the Middle East, and maintain hundreds of overseas bases while running a $2 trillion deficit? Geez, really sounds like me. I think this is the one I fall under. Which one do you fall under? This view rejects the premise that America must choose between nationalist autarky and endless strategic commitment. It argues instead for concrete deals that advance specific U.S. interests, burden sharing arrangements, and make allies pay their fair shares, and willingness to negotiate with adversaries when negotiation serves our interest. Okay, they're the three camps. This person here, I would say, is Trump with dissent. I don't know. What do you think? In fact, look at the last sentence here. The president himself is the purest embodiment of this worldview. Now, how does this play out, given what's going on with what the purported agreement is? So look at what they say here. The economic nationalists, tariffs are the point, period. The goal is not to force China to change its behavior through temporary pressure, but to permanently restructure trade relationships and build American industrial capacity. So what they're saying here is that even if Beijing made every concession Washington demanded, significant tariffs should remain to protect domestic industries and workers. This is Lutnick, okay, and Navarro, the two of them. But the transaction restrainers see this different. They say leveraging negotiation on discrete issues, fentanyl, cracking down illegal immigration, shuttering support for the Russian war effort. So when the tariffs hit 145% in April, the markets panicked. The transactionalists immediately took them down to 30% for 90 days, stabilizing the market. But again, this didn't fix how the three factions were jockeying for position in this whole thing, okay? So now, when you look at this in an academic sense, okay, tariffs can be elegantly simple and devastatingly effective, but only when wielded with a single clear objective. If tariffs are leveraged, they must eventually be lifted when China makes concession. But economic nationalists view any lifting as a betrayal of American reindustrialization. If the tariffs are permanent policy, then why exactly is America negotiating, and what for? If the goal is strategic denial, why provide China with any outlet to sell its goods and sustain an economic rise? And the last sentence is the critical one, and as anyone follows this channel know what I've been saying, without a clear answer to whether tariffs are a policy goal or leverage in pursuit of something else, the administration cannot know when it's winning or losing. Are we winning or losing? Depends on your point of view. So let's look at a specific example, okay? And look at what we're doing with Taiwan. The hard power faction correctly recognizes alliances constitute America's key asymmetric advantage over China and presses them to adopt a more assertive posture. Transactional raised legitimate questions about burden sharing and whether decades-old arrangement can still serve American interests, while economic nationalists see in some allies competitors who have benefited disproportionately from access to the U.S. market and no longer fit our purpose. So you have three different factions in America screaming at Taiwan. Which one does Taiwan react to? What do you think? Then when we look at Japan as one of our key allies, at least we keep saying that, Bessent says that, Trump says that, Rubio says that, and they've increased the biggest defense spending increases since World War II, and they're acquiring our Tomahawk cruise missile. Yet, when Tokyo sought to co-develop the next generation fighter aircraft, Washington refused to share certain advanced avionics and stealth technology. Japan turned around and they're now partnering with the Europeans. So, and then, despite negotiating a massive $550 billion trade and investment package, Japan still gets 15% baseline tariffs and continued pressure for additional burden sharing. So, what does this mean to us? Well, we're trying to decide whether we're winning or losing. Now, I guess I'm a transactionalist, so I see what's going on with China right now as a good thing, not optimal by any stretch of the imagination, right? But if you are an economic nationalist, this is a disaster for you. If the Chinese end up with 15% tariff, as far as you're concerned, you lost, all right? So when people are on here saying we win, we lose, and so forth, to me, when you look at rare earth minerals, come on, guys, it's science. It's not your opinion. We are 15 to 20 years away, and we're lucky. But we have to be clear in what we're trying to accomplish. So we have these three. Can we knock it down to two, maybe one? What do you think? What do you tell